It's also, in some places, deemed that you're not allowed to leave the boat until you do customs.
What I wanted to say is, it doesn't mean you can't stop anywhere. You can. You've always got force majeure.
Yeah, they're doing it all the time. They have a relationship with the customs officers, and they can tell you exactly what you need to do and what you don't want to do. So yeah, second topic for tonight is customs, which we've kind of been leading into. Ed's arrived up in the Faroes and had to clear customs. And if only everywhere in the world was as easy as clearing into customs as it is in the Faroe Islands, it would all be grand. Unfortunately, it isn't. What I can't do, unfortunately, is tell you exactly what's going to happen when you go into every country, whether we sail across the English Channel, whether we sail from Turkey to wherever, or we, as I say, sail from Scotland up to the Faroes, or we go across to the Caribbean or some other place. It's always going to be different, and there's always going to be local regulations. It's not going to be the same, it's going to be different. But we can still prepare ourselves. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of an insight into all the things that we might want to do and think of before we sail from one country to another. The first one is we want to make sure that we have all the relevant documents for ourselves, our crew, and the boat. You might not need every single one of these for every country, but at some stage, you're probably going to need all of these at some point. You're pretty much always going to need your boat registration. You're going to want proof of ownership, or if you're not the owner, a letter or permission to use the vessel, because your name as skipper, let's say you're a delivery skipper, wouldn't be on the boat documents. So you're going to want a letter for that. The boat is going to want to be insured. Not always, but the big one that I'm aware of, and I think it probably extends around Europe a little bit, but in France, you always need to have a ship radio license, and you also have to have your own VHF certificate. In France, I've been asked for my VHF certificate a couple of times. I've never been asked for my Yachtmaster license. So yeah, take from that what you will. If you're bringing your vessel into a different country, you're going to want proof that the vessel has paid that. Otherwise, it could be a quite expensive import of the vessel for you. You're going to want to have your logbook on your vessel. Hopefully, you would have that anyway, but you're going to want to have that to have proof of where you've come from and where the boat's been. And you'd probably want to have the logbooks for a certain period before it. So you probably wouldn't want to just start your logbook on Wednesday and then arrive in France on Friday and be like, oh yeah, this is my logbook. That's going to be a little bit, oh, what's going on with this boat? So yeah, make sure you've got the past logbooks with you as well. Obviously, you're going to need your passports. That kind of goes without saying. You would then obviously need any visas for your crew and stuff. That kind of falls into that passport. As I say, you're going to want to have a certificate of competence. Just because I hadn't been asked for it doesn't mean that you're not going to be asked for it, or I'm not going to be asked for it again. And certain places also want you to have health insurance as well, because they don't want to be picking up the bill or if anything happens to you. Before you set sail, make sure that you've checked any arrival procedures and you know where you're going to go and you know what you need to do when you get there. That might involve numbers, that might involve information, printing out stuff, filling in forms. There's many places that you can pre-register before you go. In fact, nowadays it's becoming probably more common than not that you don't need to go online to pre-register going into a country. And that can help simplify out the whole process. There's forms you can get, you fill them out online, and then you're expected when you arrive. And I'm sure we'll touch a little bit more on this later once I've kind of finished this little segment. But it can be really useful to have some sort of contact or book a customs agent. Sometimes it can be quite tricky going to certain places. And so if you've got someone already booked in to help you, that can just help alleviate any trouble that you might or hassles that you might come across, and it just smooths it all over for you. As I say, we want to check arrival procedures, and there's certain places that we're allowed to arrive when we go into a country. Most countries have recognized ports of departure or ports of arrival. And it basically means we need to leave from them ports and arrive in them ports. There's not a whole host of them in certain places, so it does mean you're a bit limited, which also does mean you have to plan where you want to arrive and where you want to go to. Post Brexit, I can't remember the numbers, but there was a handful of French arrival ports. And at one point, boats coming from the south coast of England or anywhere else outside the Schengen zone were having to arrive at these arrival ports. Thankfully, that's now changed. There's a lot of subsidiary, if that's the right word, a lot of extra. They're not classed as ports of arrival, but you are allowed to arrive at them, providing you do all the correct documentation. So that is helping matters. But yeah, other parts of the world, you are having to arrive at certain ports. You can't just rock up to an anchorage, go ashore and go to the nearest police station or anything like that. You kind of have to be going to certain ports. These ones quite often will be set up, and there'll maybe even be customs on the quay when you arrive, and that'll be your first port of call. You get onto the quayside, and before you can even step ashore or do anything, it's customs. These customs procedures, the timings can vary massively. I've had times when I've went to somewhere in the Caribbean and it's taken me a whole day to clear customs for myself, the crew, and the vessel. That sometimes is pushed on because the customs, they want to see the whole crew. Whereas sometimes they only want to see the skipper. Sometimes they want to see the skipper and the boat. Sometimes they want to see the skipper, the crew, and the whole boat. It depends, and it's all about getting this information before you arrive, finding it out, doing a little bit of research, so that you know what to expect. It's also, in some places, deemed that you're not allowed to leave the boat until you do customs. So that's the type of place, I say, where you'd arrive on a customs quay. But even in other places where it is quite easy to do customs, such as Faroes and Iceland, which are just north of us up here in Scotland, they don't like you leaving the boat. So you go to your berth, and the customs officer comes to you, but they don't want you leaving the boat until they've come on and done all the passports and everything. They want to see everybody. It's no drama there. It's no hassle, and it doesn't take too long. They just want to keep everybody on the boat before you've cleared customs. And you probably want to have some local currency handy, because if you can't leave the boat and you need to pay some dues to enter the country, then you're going to want to be able to pay that there and then, rather than be in a position where, oh, you can't leave the boat, but we need you to pay this before you can leave the boat. So yeah, just a bit of a pre-preparedness. Some top tips, as I say, agents. I'm sure Ed's had his experiences as well, but yeah, I've had experiences where you try and go and do it yourself, and it just takes so much extra time. Whereas if we employ an agent, they charged us for half a day's work, they charged us a couple of $100, and they did all the work. And it was just like, that is just so much better to just have that done, rather than us running about silly for the whole day trying to do things. So yeah, they're doing it all the time. They have a relationship with the customs officers, and they can tell you exactly what you need to do and what you don't want to do. In certain places around the world, specifically those close to the United States, such as the Caribbean, Central America, and probably South America as well, and I imagine in other parts of the world, US dollars can really help. So yeah, it's a bit of it's still recognized as a bit of a sure currency. So yeah, having some of them nearby can help. There's a great website called noonsite.com that gives you all the information about cruising. But within that, because the cruisers are sailing from country to country, they're doing a lot of customs. So it can be a really good source of finding all this information out about customs. And as I say, you can do a lot of customs online. Even here in the UK, we can do departure forms and arrival forms online. That can just kind of help smooth over the process, make it a lot more efficient. Caribbean, one of the options. There are others. What is called Sail Clear, and it's almost like, I think you just have an app on your phone basically, and you've got your boat documents saved into that, your boat practicalities saved into it, and you can do it. You can say when you're going to arrive. You still have to go to customs, but at least you've put all the information out there. They can then just print it out rather than having to fill in all the details. Because I can tell you, when you've got 10 crew on your boat and you have to fill in every little line of passport detail and address and where they were born and expiry dates, it's not the quickest. Even before we had these easier forms, I used to just have it all in a spreadsheet and I'd print it out and I just offered to give it to the customs folk. And they were like, this is a good idea. Because they were like, I don't have to write, they were like, oh, I don't need to write this all out. I can just staple this to my form. And so that helped as well. In the UK, when you register now, you actually register as I think you register as a skipper, or maybe you can register as a boat as well. But I think the last time I did it, I registered as a skipper and I registered the people I was with as my crew. So if I ever sailed again into or out of the UK, and they were my crew again, I can just click the box and say, yep, they're with me. And I didn't even have to put in their details. It saved all their details on the government website, which is quite handy. Just makes it a little bit more efficient. When you are clearing customs, you're going through that kind of immigration process, just like when we're flying, there are many things that you can't bring into or take out of the country. That includes various foods, specifically fresh foods, and even more specifically, cheeses and meats. Alcohol, there's generally limitations on it, or even complete restrictions. And tobacco as well, again, limitations or complete restrictions. The latest one for the UK and Europe is no fresh meat can come into the UK from anywhere in the EU. I don't think it's anywhere in Schengen, or it could be just anywhere in the EU. Either way, you can't bring fresh foods in. So you can't go to France on your boat, stock up on all the good charcuterie French meats, sail back across the English Channel. You would be breaking the law. Alcohol, again, even into, as I say, some of the easiest countries I've cleared customs, as Faroes, Iceland, Norway type thing. Even into them, they're still very strict on alcohol and tobacco, to the point that we've went in, had too much alcohol, and they've had to, what they did is they sealed up our bottle with like a wax cover on the top, so that when we cleared, we were taking it back out with us, basically. So we weren't bringing it into the country for consumption. We're bringing it into the country, but we're taking it back out again. So that was kind of like a workaround. But yeah, it was just easier if we didn't have to deal with that, because we never got to drink it anyway. So there was no point us actually having it there. And that's our kind of main point about customs. Do you want to add anything, Ed?
One thing that sprung to mind is we're talking about how important and valuable it is to sort of plan ahead, know which ports you can pull into, sort of research the local customs procedures before you go. But there are times when we might be sailing from the UK to the Canaries, and actually we're not planning on stopping anywhere on the way, but that big storm comes in out of nowhere and we have to pull in. And so in those situations, like having the reads almanac board obviously will give us a lot of information that we need for going into these countries. But what I wanted to say is it doesn't mean you can't stop anywhere. You can. You've always got force majeure, and you can always say, look, I don't want to stop here, but unforeseen circumstances, I have to stop here. So you can still go anchor, but you have to, in those circumstances, you must not go ashore and not expect to be able to pop ashore and go to the bakery or whatever. You just sort of stay on your boat and know that you're on the line here and you don't want to put a foot wrong. So just sort of like you don't have to avoid stopping somewhere. If you really need to, then you've got to do it. Yeah, that was one thing. Any from you, Stu?
One of the times I went up to Iceland, we'd filled in our pre-departure form and we'd emailed it off. And when I was, however many miles I was, 24 miles, and I was close to Iceland, but not that close. I was further out than the 12-mile limit, but I was relatively close. But they called us up on the VHF and they asked where we were heading to and what our intentions were and stuff. And basically the email had bounced. So we tried to let them know of what we were doing, but we didn't know they hadn't got our email. So I guess for me, it was just a big thing of they were watching. And they were aware that we were coming up there and they didn't know who we were. So yeah, they were keeping an eye on us. There was no problem. We just said the form once we got signal closer to the coast, and it was fine and they were totally cool with it. But yeah, it was an interesting one that it wasn't like, oh, I'm filling in this form, but do I really need to? Yes. And another really funny one, I always laugh at this one, was many years ago. I sailed on a 78-footer on the Clyde, and we sailed up and down every day. And it had been doing this for the best part of 15 years when I was sailing on her at this point. And then one day, the customs vessel was sailing up and down the Clyde, and they saw us, and they launched a little boat, and the little fast rib came across to us, and the guys are like, "Oh, where have you come from?" And I was like, "Oh, we've just come from Arran." And they're like, "Yeah, but where were you before that?" And I was like, "Oh, like just at Rue, our home port." And he's like, "What? Like you're from here?" And I was like, "Yeah, like we sail up and down here every day during the summer." I was like, "The boat's been doing it for 15 years." Like, because I could see that they thought we were coming in and they wanted to check us for customs. I was like, "Yeah, like the boat's been here every day for like the past 15 years. And the guys just looked at me and they're like, "Oh, well, shows you how well we do our job." And off they went. It was the most bizarre exchange. But yeah.
Oh man, yeah. I reckon there's a lot of funny stories out there about customs, because it is they're so official when they get there, but they make mistakes. We make mistakes. Get us into funny situations. As you were talking about how on it Iceland were with you arriving, and I've actually, I mean, if you think about like the English Channel, it's obvious that they're watching every boat back and forth all the time. They've always got their eyes on exactly what's going on. But you think you go into somewhere a lot more remote without so much drug smuggling, people smuggling, that sort of thing, and you think, oh, they're probably a lot more relaxed. Not true, because when you go in there, usually what you find is they're really keeping an eye for fisheries, because they don't want anyone fishing illegally in their waters. Because I can't think of a country with a coastline off the top of my head that does not have its fisheries as one of the most valuable sort of resources that it owns, you know, and so they're always really hot on protecting it. So they're still watching every boat coming in and out. If they don't know exactly what it is, if they've not been warned, you know, they'll be like, "Hey, what's going on here?" So yeah.
And I think that also explains one of the reasons in Iceland every vessel must have AIS by law, no matter the size of it. So you got a tiny, small 4-meter cabin to go out fishing, you must have AIS.
There's a history there with Iceland about the Cod Wars.
Yeah.
You heard of that?
Yeah.
That's a good one to read up on. Not enough time tonight for that, but when we were at war with Iceland. That's it. Otherwise, thank you very much for coming. Cheers, guys.
Okay, Charlie, when the house bears about 270 degrees.
Information to work out our distance from the lighthouse and use that.
We might be perfectly on track, but if we're not on time...
Just have a look. I've got my phone here at the effect it has on our steering compass.
So our echo sound is working. We can find a contour and follow it nicely into port.
We've got a nice reflective hood that allows her to keep the warmth in her head, keeps her head dry.